Hello and welcome back to another Chris Talks Footy video. This week I'm going to be talking about the story that's been dominating the headlines everywhere, and that is the Sydney Swans scandal. At the moment, it should be noted that this is still under police investigation. Everything that is being said is allegations. They have not been charged with anything. So everything is up for debate. Until we know more, we're just going to talk about the timeline of events and what we kind of know so far. So pretty much after round 23, the Swans had a game against Essendon in Melbourne, and the game ended up being quite late, so the Sydney airport has a curfew, and this game finished in a time frame where they would not be able to fly back to Sydney. So they decided to stay in Melbourne overnight at the Pullman Hotel. The coaching staff then essentially had a team dinner. They were out from like 9 p.m. till like 1 a.m., which is quite normal in any sort of situation. Some of the senior players and the coaching staff went back to their hotels at a reasonable time, but the group of players that are involved stayed out quite later, and what they allegedly got up to during those times is quite disturbing, to be quite frank, in my opinion. These players involved James Jordan, Riley Bice, Chad Warner, Nick Blakey, and Isaac Heaney. These 5 players essentially destroyed the club's reputation in just a few hours. The culture that the Sydney Swans have built over the years, being a respectable club, and all that sort of stuff kind of went down the drain in a matter of hours. Essentially, these players betrayed the trust of the playing group, their partners, the club sponsors, members, etc. They got up to a lot of horrible things. Allegedly, according to Tom Morris, who is a senior reporter for Channel 7 and SEN, stated that these players engaged in activities that regarding sexual assault. These players paid for whether it was sexual favours or whatever from sex workers, and they crossed boundaries and now are being investigated for something that is quite disgusting. There was illegal substances involved, albeit it hasn't been claimed who owns these illegal substances. Cocaine was also found in the hotel that these guys stayed at, and basically one of the players went a bit too far and committed allegedly committed a pretty serious offence, and a bunch of ladies went into the hotel lobby quite early the next morning and berated Sydney staff, including Dean Cox, who was made aware of what was actually going on. So allegedly, this was all caught on film, and the police are investigating that film. And in the meantime, these Sydney players have been essentially stood down. So being stood down means that these players will not partake in the rest of the season. They didn't play against North Melbourne recently in their win, and they will not partake in any of their final series. And that's huge ramifications, because we're talking about 3 of their best, probably 6 players. I mean, it's a toss of the coin who you believe is the best player on the Sydney Swans. Isaac Heaney has been in phenomenal form over the past couple of years. Was a fancy for a Brownlow medal a year or 2 ago, albeit he got suspended, which probably ended up costing him the medal. Chad Warner, 25 years old, has a lot of interest from other clubs, and Nick Blakey being an All-Australian halfback defender. It's a really huge loss for the Sydney Swans on field, and, defensive mid like James Jordan, who does tagging roles, it's going to hurt them in the long run. And we've seen after the game, players like Errol Gordon and Callum Mills were brought to tears after their win against North Melbourne, and it's quite sad to see players that had no involvement in this situation have to front the media and really cop a lot of harsh questions from a lot of outsiders. The AFLW team as well being affected by this situation, and it just goes to show the problem that some of these AFL players have. And when you get thousands and then millions of dollars, you think you're above everyone else and that you're allowed to do whatever you want. These players have fiancés, wives, and girlfriends, and they think it's okay to, on an away trip that's funded by the AFL, using money and locations and resources that is funded by their employer, to then do these despicable things that has ramifications not only for themselves, but for their teammates and family and friends. We've seen Isaac Heaney has already lost crucial sponsorships, including a book deal and Telstra and all that sort of stuff. And it's just a real shame that the game has kind of been brought into disrepute because of these players' actions. Respect towards women should be a priority no matter what sporting industry or just in life in general. These actions should not be condoned whatsoever, regardless of innocence or guilt. The fact that they find themselves in this situation where they are hiring sex workers when they shouldn't be doing that in the first place, and then when someone creates boundaries for themselves, for you as members of the leadership group at this football club to then cross boundaries in someone's personal life, it's a disgusting act, and I genuinely agree with a lot of people's sentiments that these players should not be welcomed back to their football clubs respectively. You know, the Swans are going to be hurting for this from a long time. It could affect a lot of things like max exoduses of players leaving and actually attracting players to come play for your football club. So that's really my take on the situation. We can't really dive into too much because it's still an investigation. So I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this little video. I know it's not, you know, the typical sort of vid. We've got the wild card coming up this week and finals next week. So we'll have a much more breakdown preview sort of video coming out within the next week for that. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this situation. Do you agree with the suspensions? Do you think, you know, they went a bit too far? Like, let me know. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.